So, Duncan Pepper from Fishing Guide Scotland back with you. Hector has now gone to bed, the little monkey. So I was talking about when to come, and I'd said that that depends on what species that you'd like to catch. Some people don't know what species they'd like to catch and then just come whenever suits best or whenever you think the weather might be best, which is generally late May through June, first week of July. Try to avoid August because it's so busy in August. There's so many people about, and yeah, it just makes getting around on our little roads quite tricky. Okay, so salmon, as I was saying, of late we've had very good fishing in May and June for big, beautiful salmon that we refer to as springers. Recently they've been coming in having spent an average of 3 winters at sea, so they're quite big and they're very powerful, and yeah, it's great fun. On the Tay catchment, which we use a lot, the average size is around 12 pounds. On the west coast, which has much smaller rivers and smaller salmon, the average is more like 7 pounds, around there. But we still get £20 plus salmon in Argyll. That's on the west coast. So I should at this point lay out that Fishing Guide operates primarily in 3 locations, and those are Edinburgh, Scotland's capital, which is in the south east of the country, out of Perthshire, specifically Aberfeldy, which if you put a map in if you put a pin where you think the centre of Scotland is on a map, that's Aberfeldy. And out of Inverary in Argyll, which is on the west coast. All of those places offer their own fishing potential and are all fantastic in their own way. I would recommend, if you want a wilder experience, to leave the big city, to leave Edinburgh and head either into Perthshire, which is a very green and luscious land, quite it's got deep valleys, it's where the River Tay is, and it's quite enveloping as a region. It's nice and friendly, and yeah. Argyll, which is on Scotland's west coast, has been described as Scotland in miniature. So it's got the mountains, beaches, it's got lots of what Scotland is known for, and it's dramatic scenery. Some of it's spectacular, and lots of the venues we use there are really spectacular. Likewise, there are very beautiful places in Perthshire. Also, Edinburgh has, the lochs and the Pentland Hills are quite special. They're really attractive as well. Okay, so moving on. So, for quality of fish, I would say, well, you can catch them in January, but they're very few and far between. Although you might catch quite a lot of post-spawn fish, which we call kelts. Now, they're not what many anglers want to catch, but they do give a good fight and can pick up your confidence in salmon fishing, because there you are catching salmon. There are some springers around in January, but they're hard to catch. February, similarly, hard fishing. March, yeah, you're starting to get the first kind of what we can describe as runs of springers. April, yeah, it's looking much more promising, especially getting into late April, and then May and June are prime time, early June especially. I said previously that in July and August the salmon fishing isn't that good. It's not strictly true, because you can have days. I took my wife in July this year for about 3 hours on the river, and she caught 3 salmon in that time, all on the fly. It can be done. It's just you need the conditions to come together. And all of those fish, and none of those fish were, one of them was a grouse, and the other 2 were multi-sea winter salmon, which means they're bigger. So July and August, can be good. And then September, October is really, we're back into prime time. This time for numbers, I would say the quality of the fish isn't quite as good as it is in May and June, because in May and June you've got those real big powerful fresh run springers. There are some fresh run fish in September and October, but the majority have been in the river for a while and are losing condition. But they're still cracking specimens. Okay, salmon season in Scotland tends to, in most rivers, is ended by the end of October. There are a couple of rivers that you can fish into November, and then it starts up again in January for salmon. So on to trout. I would say the best months for trout fishing on the rivers are March, April and May. They're very, very good. We get good hatches of large dark olives and granum, and good action on nymphs when that's not happening. Also, spider fishing can be fantastic, really good for beginners as well. And then again in September it gets good in the rivers for trout. Having said that, once again, a bit like the salmon, you can get days outside of those times that are really good, and we'll let you know if the rivers are fishing well for trout outside of those times. And then the lochs for trout. The lochs take a little bit longer to warm up than the rivers, and so does the action on the lochs. So I'd say really start of May is still quite early for the lochs. Getting into late May, June, now you're talking. July, depends where you are, the further north, so in Perthshire or on the west coast, yeah, in July it can be really good for trout on the lochs. But around Edinburgh it can be good, but it's at its best probably a bit earlier. A slight distinction here is that in Argyll and Perthshire, the lochs are by and large just native fish with no stocking at all. And around Edinburgh, because there's a bit more fishing pressure, it being the capital and there being greater population density around there, those lochs are stocked with rainbow trout. Not all of them, but the vast majority. And, well, rainbow trout make it quite a lot easier, so a good venue for beginners. So May, June, July for the lochs, and then again in September it can be very good. A bit like the rivers for trout, September can be good. For pike fishing, if it's pike you're after, then around Edinburgh, June. June is the month. It's just epic. In June, almost the whole month of June, you can get as close as we get to guaranteeing catches. It wouldn't be strange to catch more than 10 pike in a day, and the majority of those between 10 and 20 pounds. That's not a rarity. For Perthshire, June moving into July is, because it's a bit further north, it takes a little longer, is probably prime time for pike. But I had a day in August this year which was very good, and there were some big fish about. We can catch pike both on the fly and using lures. I think I mentioned that before. In Argyll, July and August are really the months. Even into September it can be very good for pike. You can catch them outside those times, and the very biggest pike we tend to catch in November, December, January, especially January and February. But those fish are few and far between, so you can blank at that time of year. For saltwater options, the best month is November. Of course, I'm talking now about the west coast, which is where the best saltwater fishing is found. The best month is November for pollack, which are a really fun sporting species that fight very hard. October is also good for them, and they can be caught at other times as well. Any of the summer months for mullet, which are like the Scottish bonefish, they're sometimes referred to because they fight extremely hard. If it's mackerel you're after, which is a good species for getting kids into fishing because they're very easy to catch and you can catch a lot of them quite, easily. Then July and August are the months for mackerel. Okay, that's a rough idea of what we can offer and the best times to come.